A lost civilization sleeps beneath the English countryside. This is Glastonbury, where ancient myths and hard evidence collide. We are going on a deep dive into the legends of King Arthur, the secrets of the Holy Grail, and controversial theories that could rewrite British history. By the end, you will have all the pieces to decide for yourself what truly lies hidden below this mysterious land. Was this the mystical Isle of Avalon, and could the ruins of a forgotten world be waiting for discovery? What does it mean when a single place holds so many enduring secrets? The mists of Avalon cling to Glastonbury like a second skin. This was no ordinary island, but a realm whispered to exist between our world and the next, a place where time itself flowed differently. It was here, according to legend, that the mortally wounded King Arthur was taken after his final battle, carried away to heal in a land of eternal twilight. The story is powerful, but it was given startling weight in the year 1191. Monks from the great Glastonbury Abbey made an earth-shattering announcement. While excavating in their cemetery, they claimed to have found a massive hollowed-out oak log serving as a coffin, and inside it, the giant bones of a man and a slender skull of a woman. A lead cross was found with the burial, inscribed with the words, "Here lies buried the renowned King Arthur in the Isle of Avalon." They declared they had found Arthur and his queen, Guinevere. This was not just a random discovery. It was a calculated revelation that tied a physical location, Glastonbury, directly to the greatest legend of the British Isles. For a monastery struggling financially after a fire, the pilgrimage money that would flow from such a find cannot be overlooked. Yet, the timing and the evidence were compelling enough to cement the connection for centuries. This single event transformed Glastonbury from a mere town into a potential archaeological wonder. It planted the unshakable idea that this ground held the secrets of a lost age, a civilization that vanished into myth. Avalon was more than a backdrop for Arthur's final sleep. It symbolized a complete otherworld, a hidden domain of profound knowledge and power that had slipped from human memory. If Arthur, the once and future king, truly rested here, then what else from his forgotten world might still lie buried, waiting to be uncovered? This foundational belief in a sunken past is the very bedrock upon which all of Glastonbury's other mysteries are built. This island status was more than just a geographical quirk. It was a defining feature that shaped everything. The surrounding marshland, known as the Summerland, was a vast, watery expanse, treacherous and difficult to cross. This natural moat meant that for much of the year, Glastonbury was physically cut off from the rest of the world. Think about what that kind of isolation creates. It fosters a culture that is unique, insular, and self-reliant. The people living on this island in the mists would have developed their own traditions, their own knowledge, and their own ways of seeing the world, completely distinct from the cultures on the drier mainland. This wasn't just a settlement, it was a world unto itself, a sanctuary hidden in plain sight. And rising from the very heart of this watery domain is the most striking feature of all, the Glastonbury Tor. This massive, conical hill seems to erupt from the flat landscape. Its symmetry is so perfect that it almost looks like it was sculpted by human hands, a giant, terraced pyramid built by nature, or perhaps by something more. For any culture living on that island, the Tor would have been the center of their universe, a natural fortress, a watchtower overlooking the marshes, and almost certainly a sacred site. Its sheer presence, visible for miles, commands attention and inspires awe even today. Could this have been the spiritual and political heart of a forgotten society? When you stand at its summit, looking out over the land that was once sea, the idea doesn't seem so far-fetched. This was a place built for secrets, a natural stronghold designed to protect whatever and whoever called it home. But legends are not built on mists and hills alone. They require the solid ground of human hands, and in the late 19th century, that evidence finally emerged from the very wetlands surrounding the Tor. The discovery was the Glastonbury Lake Village, a sophisticated pre-Roman settlement that rewrote the history of this landscape. It was found not by treasure hunters, but by a meticulous local archaeologist, Arthur Bullade, who noticed peculiar mounds in the peat. What he uncovered was not a simple camp, but a complex community of roundhouses, not built on dry land, but constructed on carefully engineered artificial platforms raised above the water. This was a village designed to thrive in the marshes, a deliberate and brilliant adaptation to its unique environment. The artifacts pulled from the peat were a revelation. This was no primitive outpost. The villagers were master craftspeople, producing intricate metalwork with elaborate designs, beautiful glass beads in vibrant colors that must have been traded from distant lands, and wood that had been expertly shaped on a lathe. This last detail is crucial. A lathe is not a simple tool. It represents a significant level of technological sophistication for its time. These people were not just surviving, they were flourishing, creating art and employing advanced manufacturing techniques long before the Roman legions set foot on British shores. This discovery provides the tangible, physical basis for the idea of a lost civilization in Glastonbury. It proves that a highly organized, skilled, and culturally rich community did indeed call this mystical island home, perfectly fitting the description of an isolated, advanced society living in the wetlands. The lake village gives a human face to the myth. It shows us that the whispers of Avalon were not born in a vacuum. They grew from the memory of a real people, a real culture, whose remarkable achievements were slowly swallowed by the peat and the passing centuries. So who were these people and what became of their world? Yet the whispers of ancient kings and lost villages are not the only legends echoing from this ground. Another story, even older and woven with threads of the divine, claims Glastonbury as its own. It centers on a mysterious figure from the Gospels, Joseph of Arimathea. According to ancient tales, after the crucifixion, this wealthy merchant and secret follower of Jesus fled the Holy Land, carrying with him the most sacred of relics. His journey, propelled by faith or fate, did not end in Rome or Byzantium, but here, on this soggy island at the edge of the known world. He is said to have climbed a hill just south of the Tor, a place now called Wiriol Hill, exhausted from his travels. And there, in a moment that blends history with miracle, he thrust his staff, cut from the thorn tree of Christ's crown, into the earth. The dry wood, instead of splintering, took root. It burst into leaf and then into flower, a living declaration that this was no ordinary place. This miraculous tree became known as the Glastonbury Thorn, a unique hawthorn that defies nature by blooming not once, but twice a year, once in the spring and once, eerily, around Christmas time. This single, enduring act anchors Glastonbury to the very dawn of Christianity in Britain. The legend asserts that Joseph and his small band built the first Christian church in all of Britain right here, a simple wattle and daub structure, the very first foundation of what would later become the mighty Glastonbury Abbey. This story does more than just add a Christian layer to the landscape. It suggests that Glastonbury's sanctity is not a recent invention. Why would a traveler from Jerusalem be guided to this specific, remote island? The tale powerfully implies that this ground was already considered holy, a sacred site of immense ancient importance long before the first Christian prayer was ever spoken here. It posits that Joseph's staff did not create the sacredness, but rather recognized it, tapping into a power that was already sleeping in the land, a power that perhaps the builders of the lake village and the priests upon the Tor had known for centuries. So if this ground was sacred to pagans and Christians alike, what other profound secrets might be encoded into the very shape of the land itself? Flowing from the base of the Tor, a spring of water has never once run dry. This is the Chalice Well, a site of veneration for thousands of years, its waters shimmering with a strange and persistent red hue. The color comes not from mystery, but from a perfectly natural source, iron oxide dissolved from the rock deep within the hill. Yet for the human imagination, this simple geological fact was never enough. That rust-red tint, like blood seeping from the earth, sparked a legend that tied this well directly to the Grail myths. Many came to believe this was the very place where Joseph of Arimathea hid the Holy Grail, the cup used at the Last Supper, and that the water was stained forever by its sacred power, or perhaps by the blood of Christ himself. The well's design deepens its aura of ancient sanctity. Its cover stone is a massive, expertly carved slab, featuring a perfect interlocking pattern known as the Vesica Piscis. This is not just decoration, it is a profound spiritual symbol representing the intersection of the divine and the earthly realms. It is a symbol found in sacred geometry across cultures and ages, a mark of deep, esoteric knowledge placed upon a source of life-giving water. For centuries, pilgrims have journeyed here to drink from its waters, believing them to possess remarkable healing properties. They spoke of cures for ailments and spiritual renewal, drawn by the well's reputation as a conduit of earthly energy. But the true secret of the Chalice Well may lie far deeper than the Christian era. The consistent flow of pure water in a landscape that was once largely marsh would have been an unimaginable treasure in the Neolithic age. This was not merely a convenience, it was a reason for a civilization to exist. A perpetual spring, especially one with such a visually striking and symbolic appearance, would have marked this spot as the absolute center of the world for any ancient people living here. It provided life, yes, but it also offered a direct connection to the powerful, unseen forces of the earth. This makes it incredibly likely that the Chalice Well was a sacred site long before the Tor was terraced, long before the lake village was built, a holy place for the very first people who laid eyes on its red waters. If a lost civilization did thrive here, this well would have been its beating heart, the reason they chose this island, and the spiritual anchor that held their entire world together. The water's endless flow suggests a truth as deep as the aquifer it comes from, that the sanctity of Glastonbury is not written in stone, but springs eternal from the land itself. This red-tinged water and its ancient well are not the only hidden patterns in this land. In the 1920s, an artist and scholar named Catherine Maltwood proposed a theory that would forever change how people saw the Glastonbury landscape. She claimed the hills, rivers, and old roads for miles around were not random features of nature. Instead, she argued they formed a colossal, hidden map of the zodiac, a giant celestial clock etched into the earth itself. This was not a small carving you could walk past. The figures she identified were enormous, each one formed from a combination of natural ridges, ancient field boundaries, and what she believed were deliberately shaped earthworks. To see the entire design, you would need a map or perhaps a view from high above, something the original creators would never have had. Her zodiac was populated by vast mythical forms. She described a great phoenix with outstretched wings, a powerful Aquarian knight, and a sprawling cup, each one spanning the countryside. This was not just a star chart, but a narrative landscape telling a story written in the soil. The immediate reaction from the archaeological establishment was one of deep skepticism. They pointed out that many of the so-called earthworks were likely natural formations, and that connecting them into coherent shapes required a significant amount of imaginative interpretation. There was no physical evidence, no digging had uncovered proof that these lines were intentionally created. For mainstream science, the theory remained an intriguing but unproven fantasy, a case of seeing patterns where none were intended. Yet the idea has refused to die. Its enduring appeal lies in the profound question it raises. What if a lost civilization, possessing a sophisticated understanding of astronomy and geometry, did encode their beliefs into the land on a scale so vast we can barely comprehend it? It suggests a society that saw the earth and the heavens as one interconnected system, and that their greatest temple was not a building, but the landscape they lived within. The theory transforms Glastonbury from a place with secrets into a place that is itself a secret, a massive, open-air cathedral designed to be read by the stars. If true, it would mean we have been walking over the pages of a forgotten holy book for centuries, unaware that the hills and streams are its words. This leads us to a modern tool that promises to read such a text, a technology that can peer into the earth without ever lifting a shovel. That lead cross, inscribed with its bold Latin declaration, is the single most important piece of evidence in the entire Arthurian mystery. The words, "Here lies buried the renowned King Arthur in the Isle of Avalon," were a direct and stunning claim. For the monks who presented it, and for the thousands of pilgrims who soon flocked to the site, this was not a legend anymore. It was confirmed history, written in metal and dug from the very ground of Glastonbury. The discovery solved a problem for the abbey, which had been devastated by a major fire just 2 decades earlier. Rebuilding a structure of that scale was astronomically expensive, and what better way to secure a steady stream of donations than to become the official burial place of Britain's greatest hero king? The financial incentive for this miraculous find is impossible to ignore. Modern analysis of the cross's lettering suggests its style was more typical of the 10th century, not the 6th century when Arthur would have died, making it a suspiciously old artifact created just in time for its dramatic unveiling. Most scholars today view the entire event as a brilliant, pious fraud, a public relations masterstroke designed to restore the abbey's wealth and secure its status as a premier pilgrimage site. Yet, calling it a simple forgery misses the deeper point. Why did this particular story resonate so powerfully that it stuck, cementing Glastonbury's identity for centuries? The answer lies in a profound human need for roots and for heroes. In the 12th century, England was forging its own national identity, and Arthur was the ultimate symbol of a lost age of British glory and unity. To have physical proof that this legendary king was not just a myth, but a real man who slept in English soil, gave the nation a tangible connection to its own epic past. It provided a sense of destiny and historical weight. For Glastonbury itself, the connection was a self-fulfilling prophecy. By declaring itself Avalon, it absorbed the myth's power, becoming a place where history and legend were no longer separate but one and the same. The monks may have planted the cross, but the people cultivated the belief because they wanted it to be true. They needed a gateway to a golden age, and Glastonbury, with its ancient tor and sacred wells, was the perfect door. This act of creation, whether deceit or divine inspiration, forever bound the fate of a real town to a fictional island, proving that sometimes a story can shape the land as powerfully as any river or stone. Even the ruins of Glastonbury Abbey speak of a power that refused to die. Before its dissolution, this was the richest monastery in England, a sprawling complex of immense wealth and influence. Yet its origins were deliberately shrouded in mystery. The oldest part of the church was built in a style the locals called Egyptian, with strange, heavy arches unlike any other Norman architecture in the country. This unique design fueled a powerful founding legend that the very first church on this site was not constructed by mortal hands. It was said that Jesus himself, in his youth, traveled here with Joseph of Arimathea, and that the earliest chapel was divinely inspired, a sacred structure born from a miracle. This was more than just a story. It was a declaration that this ground was chosen by heaven, setting it apart from every other religious site in Britain. But why build such a specific narrative unless you are trying to sanctify a place that was already profoundly powerful? The abbey's layout itself suggests a deeper secret. Whispers and fragmented records speak of a labyrinth of underground passages and hidden crypts snaking beneath the stone foundations. These were not just cellars or storage rooms. They were rumored to be sealed chambers, perhaps containing lost relics from the Holy Land, or even acting as gateways to much older structures that lay buried beneath. Such tunnels would have provided the perfect hidden space to safeguard the abbey's most precious treasures, both physical and spiritual, away from prying eyes. This deliberate construction on a known ancient sacred site is the abbey's greatest clue. The medieval monks were not just building on empty land, they were consciously overlaying their new Christian mystery onto a far older, pre-Christian power spot, effectively capturing the native sanctity of the Tor and the well and redirecting it through their own faith. They built their altar atop the same energies that once fed pagan rituals, understanding that the true power of this place was not in the stone they laid, but in the ground it stood upon. The abbey, in all its glory, was the final chapter in a story that began thousands of years earlier, a grand attempt to contain a wild and ancient magic within the disciplined walls of a new religion. Rising from the flat Somerset levels, the Glastonbury Tor presents a puzzle etched directly into its grassy slopes. Those strange, symmetrical terraces that ring the hill are not a natural formation. They form a series of 7 distinct levels wrapping around the conical peak in a perfect spiraling pattern. For a long time, the simplest explanation was that they were medieval farming strips carved to make the steep hill easier to cultivate. Yet, this practical theory begins to fray when you look closer. The terraces are remarkably even and consistent, following the contour of the hill with an almost geometric precision that seems unnecessary for simple agriculture. Their construction would have been a massive, back-breaking undertaking, and the soil on such a steep slope would have been poor and quickly eroded by rain. If not for farming, then what was their purpose? Another idea suggests they were defensive ramparts, the foundations of ancient walls that once made the Tor an impregnable fortress. This is compelling as the hill's summit does show evidence of Iron Age and later medieval settlements, but the terraces themselves, with their smooth, continuous pathways, do not feel like fortifications. They do not block or defend, they instead seem to guide. This has led to the most captivating theory of all, that these ridges are the remnants of a vast, 3-dimensional labyrinth. Imagine a single, winding path starting at the base of the Tor and slowly, methodically, spiraling its way around the entire hill 7 times before finally reaching the summit. A pilgrim would not climb directly up, but would walk a much longer, contemplative route, turning back and forth, seeing the landscape from every possible angle during the slow, deliberate ascent. This transforms the Tor from a simple hill into a profound spiritual instrument. Walking a labyrinth is an ancient practice found in cultures across the world. Unlike a maze, which is designed to confuse and lose you, a labyrinth has only one path. There are no dead ends or wrong turns. The purpose is not to trick you, but to guide you on a prescribed journey. The long, winding walk to the center is a time for releasing the worries of the world, for letting go. Reaching the center is a moment of meditation, of receiving insight or clarity. And the walk back out is a process of returning to the world, transformed and renewed. If the Tor was designed as such a labyrinth, it was a machine for enlightenment, using the very landscape to orchestrate a spiritual experience. The physical effort of the climb, combined with the mental focus of following the path, would have produced a powerful, altered state of consciousness in the pilgrim. This points to a civilization with a deep, sophisticated understanding of sacred geometry and human psychology. They were not just building structures, they were engineering transformation, using the land itself to connect the earthly with the divine. The Tor becomes a giant antenna, a spiral staircase between worlds, and its true treasure was not something you could find at the top, but something you had to become on the way up. Before the tales of kings and holy relics, the land whispered of a different kind of ruler. The oldest stories of Glastonbury speak of giants, colossal beings who shaped the very hills and valleys with their hands. These were not the monsters of later fairy tales, but primal forces of nature, intimately tied to the soul of the landscape. The most powerful of them all was Gwyn ap Nudd. In the deep wells of Celtic mythology, he was no simple fairy. Gwyn was the king of the Tylwyth Teg, the fairy folk, and the lord of Anon, the Celtic otherworld, a realm of the dead and of supernatural wonder. His palace was not built upon the Tor, but deep within it. He was the guardian of the hill's deepest secrets, a spectral monarch who ruled from a throne hidden in caverns far below the terraced slopes. His presence transforms the Tor from a mere hill into a gateway to another dimension, a place where the veil between our world and the next was whisper thin. Another giant, Gog-Magog, was said to have stalked this land, a being of such immense size that his struggles with other giants were believed to have carved out the very topography of the region. Why would such specific and enduring stories of giants be attached to this one place? Folklore often serves as a long, echoing memory of events too distant for written history. The giant lore of Glastonbury functions exactly this way. Imagine a people arriving in this land thousands of years later, perhaps the early Celts or even the Anglo-Saxons. They find the landscape dotted with truly colossal structures, things they could not explain. They see the massive, man-made terraces of the Tor, a feat of engineering that seemed superhuman. They might have uncovered the giant bones of prehistoric animals like mammoths or woolly rhinos and misinterpreted them as the remains of enormous people. The evidence of a previous, advanced culture was all around them, in earthworks and monuments so grand that their own technology could not replicate them. The only logical explanation for their ancestors was that a race of giants must have built them. The large stature of these beings becomes a perfect metaphor for the monumental scale of their achievements. These stories are not mere fantasy, they are a form of ancestral testimony. They are the voice of a people trying to make sense of a past that was physically present but historically lost. The giants of Glastonbury are the memory of the Lake Village builders, the labyrinth engineers, the megalithic people who moved stones that defied ordinary human strength. They are the ghost of a lost civilization, remembered not as men, but as titans who walked the earth when the world was young. These converging lines of earth energy trace paths far beyond the Tor itself. They are known as the Michael and Mary ley lines, two of the most famous and controversial alignments in all of Britain. The concept of ley lines suggests that ancient sacred sites are not randomly placed, but are deliberately positioned along straight tracks that crisscross the landscape. The Michael line, traditionally associated with masculine, solar energy, runs across southern England. It connects a series of high places, many dedicated to the Archangel Michael, the celestial warrior often depicted slaying a dragon. You can trace its path from St. Michael's Mount, a tidal island off the coast of Cornwall, through other hilltop churches bearing his name, straight to the summit of Glastonbury Tor, which itself once held a church dedicated to St. Michael. The Mary line, linked to feminine, lunar energy, weaves a different but parallel route. It connects ancient holy wells, including the Chalice Well, and sites dedicated to the Virgin Mary, also converging powerfully on the Tor. The paths of these two lines are not simple and straight, but their alleged convergence at this single point is what makes Glastonbury so magnetically significant in this esoteric geography. The theory proposes that these are not just lines on a map, but actual currents of natural Earth energy, something like the planet's own nervous system. Ancient cultures, the theory suggests, were far more attuned to these subtle energies than we are today. They could sense these power flows much like a dowser can feel for underground water. So they built their most important temples, their stone circles, and their burial mounds directly upon these energetic conduits, tapping into the land's inherent power. This transforms our understanding of why Glastonbury was so special. It wasn't just a defensible island with a good water source. It was a colossal power station, a place where two of the most potent energy lines in the country crossed. For a civilization that could perceive this, it would have been the brightest beacon on the map, a place where the veil between worlds was thin and the energy for spiritual work was immense. The Tor then becomes more than a hill or a labyrinth. It becomes a giant acupuncture needle for the earth, planted precisely at a point where the body of the land needed it most. If this theory holds any truth, then the lost civilization beneath Glastonbury wasn't just living on the land. They were in a constant, conscious dialogue with its hidden, living pulse. The idea of a lost British civilization raises a profound question. Where did its knowledge originate? Some theories stretch far beyond the misty shores of Britain, all the way to the sun-drenched civilizations of the Mediterranean. Could the architects of Glastonbury's mysteries have been influenced by visitors from across the sea? The most daring proposals point to the Phoenicians, the legendary seafaring traders from the Near East. These were the master mariners of the ancient world, their ships laden with goods and ideas, known to have sailed as far as Cornwall for its precious tin. It is not such a great leap to imagine their galleys navigating up the rivers of Somerset, drawn to the imposing landmark of the Tor. They would have recognized a sacred high place similar to their own hilltop shrines. Even more compelling is the structure of the Glastonbury Lake Village. Its round houses built on wooden platforms over water bear a striking resemblance to prehistoric lake dwellings found across Europe, most famously in Switzerland. This was not a unique, isolated invention, but part of a widespread architectural tradition. This similarity suggests a shared cultural knowledge, a common understanding of how to live in wetland environments that could have been carried along ancient trade routes, perhaps by people like the Phoenicians. Another tantalizing clue lies in the worship of a mother goddess. The Chalice Well, with its life-giving red waters, is a natural symbol of feminine power and fertility. This focus on a divine feminine principle echoes the central goddess figures of much older Mediterranean cultures, particularly the Minoans of Crete. Their vibrant, sea-based civilization revered powerful nature goddesses, and their influence rippled across the Bronze Age world. Could a memory of this ancient reverence have traveled north, finding a perfect home in the sacred springs and fertile marshes of Glastonbury? This leads to the grandest theory of all, that Glastonbury was not an isolated kingdom, but the far western outpost of a vast, interconnected megalithic culture. This was a network of people who shared a common spiritual language written in stone, from the great circles of Stonehenge and Avebury to the tombs of the Boyne Valley in Ireland. They were the original surveyors of the land, the ones who first sensed the energetic lines and built their monuments with celestial precision. Glastonbury, with its converging ley lines and its Tor visible for miles, would have been a beacon for this culture, a terminal point on a continental web of sacred sites. It represents the end of the known world, the last great sanctuary before the vast, unknown ocean. These theories, while speculative, transform Glastonbury from a local wonder into a potential piece of a global puzzle. They suggest that the whispers from the Tor are not just British legends, but fragments of a much older, forgotten conversation between civilizations. This search for divine connection leads us to the most enduring of all Glastonbury's quests, the hunt for the Holy Grail. The legend is clear and potent. After the crucifixion, Joseph of Arimathea, that pivotal figure, fled Jerusalem. He did not travel empty-handed. He carried with him the very cup used by Jesus at the Last Supper, a vessel that later, according to some traditions, was used to catch the blood of Christ at the cross. This sacred relic, charged with immense spiritual power, needed a final, safe resting place far from the political turmoil of the Holy Land. The stories insist that Joseph's long journey ended here, in the midst of this island sanctuary. He is said to have hidden the Grail for safekeeping, and many believe its final hiding place was none other than the Chalice Well. Its iron-rich waters a permanent, physical echo of the sacred blood it once contained. But what exactly is the Grail? Its nature shifts depending on who is seeking it. For some, it remains a literal, physical object, a lost archaeological treasure of unimaginable historical and religious significance, waiting in a sealed chamber beneath the Tor or deep within a forgotten abbey crypt. For others, the Grail is something far more profound than a simple cup. It transforms into a symbol of direct personal spiritual revelation, a divine knowledge or grace that cannot be found in a church but must be sought within oneself. In this view, the Grail is an experience of God, a moment of ultimate enlightenment that heals the wounded soul and restores a broken world. There is another, more controversial interpretation, one that intertwines the Grail with the idea of a sacred bloodline. In these tales, the Grail is not a cup at all, but a person, or more precisely, a lineage, the Sangrail or Holy Blood, referring to the descendants of Jesus and Mary Magdalene. This version suggests that Joseph of Arimathea brought not just a relic, but members of this royal bloodline to the safety of Britain, establishing a divine kingship that would later find its ultimate expression in the legends of King Arthur and his connection to Avalon. So why does this search remain so powerfully fixed on Glastonbury? The quest for the Grail is at its heart a quest for a lost golden age. It is the longing for Avalon, that perfect, harmonious civilization that slipped from human history into myth. The Grail represents everything that was lost, the divine knowledge, the spiritual purity, the connection between heaven and earth that characterized that forgotten world. To find the Grail would be to rediscover Avalon itself, to restore that lost perfection. Glastonbury, with its layered history of ancient villages, sacred springs, and Arthurian legend, provides the only conceivable landscape for such a monumental rediscovery. It is the one place where all the threads of the story, the pagan, the Christian, the historical, and the mythical, converge into a single, tangible point. The land itself seems to invite the search, promising that the ultimate answer to the greatest mystery of the West is still here, waiting just beneath the surface, in the red waters of the well and the silent, spiraling path of the Tor. Fire was a constant, lurking terror in a world built of timber and prayer. In the year 1184, that terror became reality for Glastonbury Abbey. A devastating blaze swept through the sacred complex, consuming roofs, treasures, and centuries of history in its wake. The early wooden churches, including the legendary Old Church said to be founded by Joseph of Arimathea, were reduced to ash and memory. For the monks who survived, this was more than a physical catastrophe. It was a spiritual and financial crisis of existential proportions. The abbey, once a beacon of faith, was now a smoldering ruin, its ability to attract pilgrims and their crucial donations utterly destroyed. In the stark silence after the flames, the community faced a simple, brutal question. How would they survive? Their answer would not be found in stone and mortar alone, but in the fertile ground of legend. The fire had cleared the slate, creating a vacuum that demanded a story powerful enough to ensure their rebirth. Out of this ashes, a plan was born, a deliberate and brilliant campaign to rewrite the abbey's destiny. The subsequent rebuilding was not just an architectural project, it was a masterstroke of myth-making. The monks needed a patron saint, a foundational hero whose fame could eclipse their own tragic loss. They found him in the most celebrated figure of British law, King Arthur. The excavation in the cemetery just a few years later, and the sudden appearance of that lead cross and those giant bones, was far too convenient to be a simple coincidence. This was history being actively manufactured. The discovery provided the perfect catalyst, a divine sign that this holy ground was indeed the Isle of Avalon. It gave the rebuilding fund a glorious purpose, transforming it from a plea for charity into a national duty to honor a fallen king. Pilgrims flocked, not just to see the new church, but to stand at the grave of a legend. Donations poured in from across the country, from nobles and commoners alike, all eager to be part of this rediscovered history. In securing their own future, the monks of Glastonbury performed an alchemy that would last for centuries. They successfully blurred the line between myth and reality, fusing the story of Arthur permanently to their physical location. This act did more than just fill their coffers, it poured a foundation of belief deeper than any stone. By planting the seed of Arthur's tomb, they cultivated the unshakable idea that this land was special, that it held layers of secrets waiting to be uncovered. The lost civilization was no longer just a whispered rumor, it was now an official, Abbey-sanctioned fact. The fire of 1184, a moment of utter destruction, ironically became the spark that ignited Glastonbury's eternal flame, a light fed not by truth, but by the far more enduring power of a story we desperately want to believe. The secrets of Glastonbury are no longer solely in the hands of storytellers and shovel-wielding archaeologists. Today, a suite of silent, invisible technologies peers into the earth, searching for the ghostly outlines of a lost world. Ground-penetrating radar, or GPR, works like a sophisticated echolocation system for solid ground. It sends pulses of energy down into the soil and listens for the reflections that bounce back from buried walls, pits, or voids. This allows researchers to create a three-dimensional map of what lies below, all without ever breaking the surface. Another tool, LiDAR, uses lasers fired from an aircraft to strip away the modern clutter of vegetation and buildings, revealing the subtle contours of the land beneath. It can show the faint traces of ancient field boundaries, earthworks, and pathways that are completely invisible to the naked eye, etched into the landscape like faded ink on parchment. Geomagnetic surveys add another layer to this investigation. They measure tiny variations in the Earth's magnetic field, which can be disturbed by past human activity. A buried hearth, a filled-in ditch, or a pile of fired bricks will all create a distinct magnetic signature, painting a picture of where people once lived, worked, and built. These modern surveys have already yielded tantalizing results. Around the base of the Tor, scans have revealed what appear to be the foundations of structures that do not match any known historical record. These are not the rounded homes of the lake village, but the right angles and straight lines suggestive of more formal, perhaps ceremonial, buildings. Similarly, in the fields surrounding the abbey, GPR has mapped a complex web of buried walls and anomalies that extend far beyond the known monastic precinct. They hint at a much larger, more densely populated settlement than previously imagined, a bustling town supporting the spiritual center. Yet for every answer these tools provide, they pose a dozen new questions. The data shows an anomaly, a shadow in the earth, but it cannot tell you what that shadow is made of, or who built it, or why. A rectangular shape could be a medieval barn, a Roman villa, or the foundation of a temple from a forgotten religion. The technology reveals the presence of secrets but stubbornly withholds their meaning. This creates a profound and modern tension for the mystery of Glastonbury. We now have the ability to see that something is down there, a hidden architecture sleeping just beneath our feet. We can point to a spot on a map and say, with scientific certainty, that the ground is not empty. Yet the physical truth remains locked away, protected by the very soil that has preserved it for centuries. The more we scan, the more we understand how little we truly know. The high-tech maps do not dispel the legend, they give it a new, measurable form. They confirm that the layers of history here are deep, complex, and largely unexcavated, preserving the core of the mystery even as we shine a new light upon it. The lost civilization may be closer than ever to discovery, yet it remains just out of reach, its final story waiting for a future generation to unearth. The silent echoes of the past found a new voice in the 20th century, not through archaeology, but through a powerful spiritual and cultural resurgence. As the modern world industrialized, a growing number of people felt a deep disconnect, a longing for the magic and meaning that seemed to have vanished from the land. They turned their gaze to Glastonbury, seeing in its Tor and wells not just history, but a living, breathing alternative to the soulless concrete of the New Age. One of the most influential figures in this revival was a woman named Dion Fortune. A pioneering occultist and psychologist, she did not just study Glastonbury's legends, she actively moved there to be closer to its power. She founded a magical order, the Fraternity of the Inner Light, and from her base near the foot of the Tor, she claimed to communicate directly with the spiritual guardians of the land, the archetypal beings she called the secret chiefs of Avalon. Through her powerful writings, especially her novel The Sea Priestess, she wove the physical landscape of Glastonbury into a new mythology for the modern seeker. She presented the Tor as a great battery of psychic energy and the land itself as a gateway to other dimensions of consciousness. Her work provided a sophisticated, esoteric framework that made the ancient mysteries accessible, transforming local folklore into a system of personal spiritual development. This foundation of mystical thought set the stage for a more public celebration. In the early 1970s, a dairy farmer named Michael Eavis organized a small, open-air music event on his land near Pilton. He called it the Pilton Pop, Blues and Folk Festival, but its spirit was pure Avalon. Inspired by the counterculture ideals of peace, love, and spiritual freedom that were echoing from places like Woodstock, Eavis envisioned a gathering that would embody the legendary harmony of the lost civilization. This first festival, the direct ancestor of the massive Glastonbury Festival we know today, was not merely a concert. It was a deliberate attempt to recreate the ideals of the Isle of Avalon, a temporary city of utopian community built on the very soil where that golden age was said to have flourished. It was a place where music, art, and a shared yearning for something more profound could merge. This influx of new energy from the hippie and New Age movements did more than just fill fields with tents and stages. It created a fresh wave of pilgrims, individuals drawn not by monastic doctrine, but by a personal quest for awakening. They came to meditate on the Tor, to drink from the Chalice Well, and to feel for themselves the rumored earth energies. They were not looking for a historical artifact, but for a living connection to the ancient wisdom they believed was encoded in the land itself. This constant stream of seekers, generation after generation, ensured that the myths of a lost civilization never faded into dusty academic papers. They were kept vibrant, relevant, and alive through lived experience. The stories were no longer just tales from a book. They were felt in the beat of a drum circle at the festival and in the quiet contemplation of a sunrise from the hilltop. The 20th century proved that Avalon was not a place you merely excavated. It was a state of mind you could choose to inhabit. A powerful enchantment clings to these stories, but the cold light of reason offers a very different interpretation. For every voice that speaks of giants and grails, another asks for a single piece of irrefutable proof. Mainstream archaeology has spent decades carefully sifting through the soil of Glastonbury, and its conclusions are far less magical. The central claim of a high-tech, Atlantis-like civilization, a society with lost technologies and esoteric wisdom, finds no support in the excavated record. There are no buried crystals, no strange metal alloys, no evidence of a culture more advanced than its neighbors. The artifacts we do have, from the beautiful metalwork of the Lake Village to the pottery found on the Tor, all fit comfortably within the known technological capabilities of the British Iron Age. These were skilled and organized people, yes, but they were not the survivors of a forgotten super-civilization. Look at the two most famous pieces of evidence. The discovery of King Arthur's tomb reeks of a pious fraud. The lead cross, dated by its lettering to a period centuries after Arthur's death, appeared with miraculous timing just when the abbey was desperate for funds after the Great Fire. For a modern historian, this is not a mystery. It is a masterful public relations campaign, a calculated use of national myth to secure financial survival. Similarly, the vast Glastonbury Zodiac is seen by science as a classic case of apophenia, the human brain's natural tendency to find meaningful patterns in random information. When you connect natural hill formations and centuries-old field boundaries with imaginary lines, you can create almost any picture you wish. There is no archaeological evidence that anyone ever intentionally sculpted the land to form these shapes. The zodiac is a beautiful idea projected onto the landscape, not one dug out of it. This leads to the most profound and ironic possibility of all. What if the true lost civilization has been here all along, hiding in plain sight? The real story, the one written in post holes and pottery shards, is that of the ordinary yet astonishingly sophisticated Iron Age Britons. The people of the Lake Village were not primitive. They were ingenious engineers who built a thriving community in a challenging wetland environment. They were artists creating intricate jewelry and traders connected to far-off lands. Their civilization was not lost in a cataclysm, but slowly transformed through centuries of Roman influence, Saxon settlement, and Norman conquest. Their world was gradually overwritten, its memory fading into the very soil it was built upon. Our longing for a golden age, for a time of giants and god-kings, may have done these real people a great disservice. By chasing the spectre of Atlantis, we risk overlooking the genuine marvel of what was actually here. The true mystery is not about a forgotten high-tech society, but about how we have allowed the rich, complex history of these resilient Iron Age communities to be overshadowed by more glamorous but far less substantiated myths. The land of Avalon may truly be lost, not because it sank into the marshes, but because we stopped seeing the real wonder in the world that existed. Long before the Abbey's bells rang out, a different kind of power was invoked from the Tor's summit. In the deep-rooted Celtic myths of the Britons, this was not just a hill, but a sacred gateway to Anon. This Welsh otherworld was not a place of punishment or darkness, as later Christian hells would be imagined. Anon was a realm of eternal youth and boundless plenty, an island of apple trees where sickness and decay held no sway. It was a parallel dimension of pure potential, existing just beyond the veil of our own reality, and its primary entrance was believed to be right here, hidden within the Tor. The ruler of this phantom kingdom was Gwyn ap Nudd, a figure far more complex and potent than any simple fairy king. He was a psychopomp, a guide of souls, the one who shepherded the dead into his shimmering realm. His presence was most fiercely felt during the wildest storms, when he was said to lead the CW circumflex en Anon, his spectral hounds, on a terrifying charge across the skies. This was the Wild Hunt, a ghostly cavalcade heard in the howling wind, a warning that the Lord of the Otherworld was riding, collecting lost souls. To hear the baying of his hounds was to stand on the very threshold between life and death. This mythology offers a profound key to understanding the land's enduring power. The Celts saw Glastonbury as a classic thin place, a location where the boundary between the mundane world and the spiritual realm became so fragile you could almost step through. The Tor was not merely a symbol of this gateway, it was the active portal itself. The swirling mists that cloaked the island were not just weather, they were the visible breath of Anon, a tangible sign of the otherworld leaking into our own. This belief transforms every story that came later. Why would a lost civilization choose to build here, expending immense effort to terrace this specific hill? Not just for defense or agriculture, but because they too perceived this innate geographical sanctity. They may have shared the same fundamental experience of the Tor as a place of intense spiritual energy, a node where communication with the divine was possible. Their labyrinthine terraces, then, were not just a path to a summit, but a ritualized approach to the very doorway of Anon. Each spiral walk was a journey closer to the other side, a way to safely navigate the potent and dangerous energies of the threshold. The tales of Gwyn ap Nudd and his wild hunt are not mere superstition. They are the poetic, ancient memory of a people who felt the land was alive with conscious, powerful forces. They recognized that some places hum with a different frequency, and they built their entire worldview around honoring that invisible geography. The lost civilization we seek may not have vanished into the earth, but into this mythic understanding, their physical structures serving as a testament to their belief that they were living in the very porch of the otherworld. Water is the lifeblood of this landscape, and its symbolism runs as deep as the aquifer beneath the Tor. The entire history of Glastonbury is a story of submersion and emergence. The vast marshes that once isolated the island were not just a barrier, they were a protector, a liquid veil that concealed a unique way of life from the outside world. This is the dual nature of water here. It both hides and reveals. For centuries, the peat of the Somerset levels acted as a perfect preservative, swallowing the Glastonbury Lake Village and holding its secrets safe until the precise moment we learned how to look for them. The water gave the civilization its home, and then the water kept that civilization's memory intact, revealing it only when the time was right. This theme of concealment and revelation is perfectly captured in the most iconic Arthurian legend. The sword Excalibur was not pulled from a stone in some crowded square, but was given to the young Arthur by a mysterious hand rising from the still waters of a lake. The Lady of the Lake, a figure of immense power dwelling in a realm beneath the surface, presented the symbol of kingship from the depths. The weapon that would define a golden age was not forged in a fiery furnace alone, but was tempered in the hidden, cool wisdom of the water, emerging into the light only when a worthy ruler appeared. This is the ultimate act of watery revelation, a secret power held in trust until the world is ready to receive it. And just as the land itself experiences an annual cycle of death and rebirth, so too does the legend of this lost world. Every winter, the rains would come and the Somerset levels would flood, transforming the land back into a shallow inland sea. For a time, Glastonbury would become a true island once more, cut off and submerged in its ancient identity. Then, as the seasons turned, the waters would slowly recede, and the land would emerge again, fresh and renewed, ready for a new cycle of life. This was not a destructive force, but a cleansing, regenerative one. It mirrored the great cycles of history where civilizations rise, flourish, and then appear to fall, only for their essence to lie dormant, waiting for a future age to rediscover them and draw new strength from their legacy. Glastonbury does not just sit on the land, it perpetually emerges from the waters, a phoenix not of fire, but of mist and marsh, forever rising from the very element that both birthed and concealed it. Glastonbury's whispers of a sunken world are not alone. Across the globe, humanity tells the same story in different tongues. We dream of Atlantis, a mighty island empire swallowed by the sea in a single day and night. We speak of Lemuria, a pacifist continent lost beneath the Indian Ocean, and of Shangri-La, a hidden Himalayan valley where an ancient, wise culture preserves its secrets. These are not just stories, they are echoes of a deep, shared longing. Each legend follows a hauntingly similar pattern. First, there is a golden age, a society of profound spiritual and technological advancement, living in harmony with the earth and the cosmos. Then comes the cataclysm, a great flood, an earthquake, or some other planetary upheaval that erases this paradise from the map. Finally, there is the tantalizing promise that it is not truly gone, but merely hidden, sleeping in some remote, inaccessible place, waiting for the right moment or the right person to bring its wisdom back to a world that has forgotten. This recurring myth speaks to something fundamental within us. It is a collective memory of a fall from grace, a nostalgia for a time when humanity was wiser, more connected, and more whole. We feel in our bones that we have lost something essential, and these stories give that loss a name and a map. They are a compass pointing toward a forgotten part of ourselves. Yet Glastonbury stands apart in this legendary company. Atlantis is a phantom, its location debated somewhere in the vast, unknowable Atlantic. Lemuria is a geological speculation, and Shangri-La a beautiful metaphor. Glastonbury, however, is real. You can climb its tor, you can touch the stones of its abbey, you can drink from the red waters of the Chalice Well. It is a myth that never left the earth, a story that remained anchored to a specific, tangible location where people have lived, worshipped, and sought meaning for thousands of years. This continuous thread of human experience, from the Iron Age lake villagers to the medieval monks to the modern-day pilgrims, makes Glastonbury uniquely compelling. It is not a civilization we imagine was lost far away and long ago. It is one we feel might be buried right here under our feet, its presence woven into the very soil we walk on. This physical reality transforms the universal myth from a distant fantasy into a personal possibility, inviting every visitor to become part of the ongoing search for whatever sleeps beneath the green English hills. Behind every great legend, you will find a storyteller. For Glastonbury, those storytellers were the medieval monks of the abbey, men who understood the immense power of a well-told tale. Their motives were not born of deception alone, but from a complex mix of spiritual duty and stark necessity. In a world where hundreds of monasteries vied for the attention and wealth of nobles and commoners alike, a monastery needed a powerful claim to fame to survive. Pilgrimage was the lifeblood of a great religious house, and pilgrims flocked to places that held miracles, martyrs, and heroes. What greater draw could there be than the tomb of King Arthur or the first Christian church in Britain, founded by a man who had walked with Jesus? By promoting and, in some cases, likely creating these legends, the monks were engaging in a brilliant act of spiritual marketing. They wove together threads from many different sources. They took the powerful Celtic folklore of the Tor as a gateway to the otherworld and sanctified it with the story of St. Michael's Church on its summit. They absorbed the local reverence for the sacred spring and gave it a Christian identity as the Chalice Well. They took the mysterious, ancient earthworks and repurposed them as parts of a grand divine plan. The discovery of Arthur's grave was their masterpiece, a calculated event that tied their location directly to the most potent national myth. These monks were master synthesizers, blending pre-Christian tradition, biblical narrative, and pure invention into a single, compelling package. They were not destroying the old stories, they were baptizing them, claiming that all the ancient power of this land had always been pointing toward their Christian God. In doing so, they secured their own future, transforming their abbey into a destination that offered a direct connection to a lost golden age. They became the original architects of the Avalon we know today, the myth makers whose creative work laid the foundation for centuries of speculation and search. We are still following the trail they blazed, exploring the magnificent story they built to ensure their home would never be forgotten. The rock that forms Glastonbury Tor tells its own silent story of endurance. While the surrounding landscape is soft clay and peat, the Tor is an island of much harder stuff. Its core is a resilient sandstone, capped with a particularly tough layer that geologists call the Bridport Sand Formation. This capstone acts like a natural umbrella, shielding the hill's softer layers from the relentless work of wind and rain. Over millions of years, as the elements carved away the surrounding plains into the flat Somerset levels, this stubborn summit refused to be worn down. Its solitary prominence is not an accident of myth, but a direct result of this geological defiance, a fact that anchors the entire legend in physical reality. Beyond its visible strength, the hill seems to possess invisible qualities that have fueled modern speculation. Dowsers and researchers measuring the site have reported strange fluctuations in the local magnetic field. These subtle anomalies are not proof of magic, but they are measurable disturbances in the Earth's own energy. For those who believe in the ley line theory, these readings are the scientific echo of the Michael and Mary lines, the tangible signature of the energetic currents they say converge here. The rock itself, it seems, may be channeling something we are only just learning to detect. This unique geology did not just create a landmark, it created a natural temple. To the first people who arrived here, the Tor's dramatic presence would have been utterly inexplicable. Why did this one hill stand so proud and alone in a vast, watery plain? Its sheer dominance of the horizon, its survival against all odds, would have marked it as a place of immense power. The very substance of the hill, from its unyielding capstone to its hidden magnetic whispers, made it a focal point for human awe, a beacon that naturally drew settlement, worship, and story for thousands of years. The myth of Avalon began not with a poet's dream, but with the slow, stubborn persistence of stone. The mists of Avalon have never truly faded, for they found a new home in the imagination of poets and painters. Alfred, Lord Tennyson's epic cycle, The Idylls of the King, did not simply retell the Arthurian tales, it breathed a Victorian soul into them, framing Camelot as a lost utopia of noble ideals tragically corrupted from within. His work transformed the legend from a medieval romance into a poignant metaphor for the anxieties of his own industrial age, a lament for a purity that seemed to be slipping away. This artistic longing was echoed even more powerfully in the stirring verses of William Blake's Jerusalem. Though he never mentions Glastonbury by name, his vision of building a new heaven in England's green and pleasant land is pure Avalon. It captures the core spiritual quest, the belief that a divine blueprint for society lies sleeping just beneath the surface, waiting to be awakened by human faith and effort. These creators were not merely using old stories, they were tapping into the deep, recurring themes that make the Glastonbury myth so enduring: the profound sense of loss, the eternal quest for something sacred, and the hope for spiritual and societal renewal. Their art, in turn, fed the legend back into the culture, giving it new forms and fresh relevance for each generation. This cycle of inspiration continues unabated in our own time, from Marion Zimmer Bradley's feminist retelling In the Mists of Avalon, which recentered the narrative on the priestesses of the old religion, to blockbuster films that keep the Grail quest alive on the silver screen. Each new interpretation adds another layer to the myth, proving that a civilization is not defined solely by its stone foundations or its excavated artifacts. A culture can achieve a kind of immortality not in the ground, but in the collective human spirit, continually reshaped and reborn through the stories we choose to tell. The true legacy of that lost world is not a buried city, but an unquenchable idea. We have walked through the mists of Avalon, from the legendary resting place of King Arthur to the sacred waters of the Chalice Well. We have stood on the terraced slopes of the Tor, contemplating its possible role as a spiritual labyrinth, and we have examined the hard evidence of the Glastonbury Lake Village, a real and thriving community that proves a sophisticated society did indeed flourish here. We have traced the lines of myth and energy that converge on this point, from the ancient tales of Gwyn, ap Nudd, to the modern pilgrims who seek its power. The question remains, what is the true heart of this mystery? Is Glastonbury the literal site of a sunken civilization, its ruins still waiting to be unearthed beneath the abbey or deep within the hill? Or is its greater power symbolic, a physical anchor for our most profound human yearnings? It stands as a testament to our endless search for a lost golden age, a paradise that slipped from our grasp, and our deep desire to reconnect with a wisdom we feel we have forgotten. This landscape is a mirror reflecting back whatever we come to it seeking, whether it is historical truth, spiritual awakening, or simply the magic of a good story. So as the sun sets behind that iconic Tor, casting long shadows across the fields that were once sea, the final question belongs to you. What do you believe lies beneath Glastonbury? Is it the bones of a king, the cup of a god, or the enduring dream of a perfect world? Share your theories in the comments below and subscribe for more journeys into history's greatest mysteries.